All right. I'm starting a little early, but that's okay. I figured I'd start a little early, allow myself to read a little bit before I go to work. So this morning I read more from White Fragility. This is the third section of the read through, and I listened for 30 minutes while following along in the Kindle book and also taking notes. Um, if you want to know when I go live with these, it is I usually try to post it on my Twitter, but it usually is around 8:30 every morning. So I feel like I learned a lot in this particular section of the book, and it's all about definitions and realizing that my definitions for a lot of these things has been incorrect, especially now that language has changed. So I feel like I'm actually finally at the age where language that was used when I was younger can possibly change. The context, the definition can change, and I think that that's going to help me understand a lot of the issues that I haven't understood in the past. So let's talk about what I read a little bit in the notes I put down. So racism. Um, the book describes racism as when a racial group's collective prejudice is backed by the control of legal authority and institutional control. Racism is a structure, not an event. One of the professors, Kawanui, said that. So everyone has prejudice and discrimination, but structures of oppression become a system, and that becomes an ism, racism, or an ideology. And I think one of the biggest things I have to understand is that, yes, these words are very charged with meaning, but I need to not be afraid of the words. They are just words describing something. So racism is describing institutional control based off of a collective group. Everyone, even if one woman hates men, that doesn't mean it's systematic sexism. So this was interesting for me. So basically, isms, sexism, racism, it's about the people that are in control. So yes, a woman can be prejudiced and discriminate toward a man. However, because of men being in such a position of control and power, women being having sexism towards men isn't necessarily a thing. That is very difficult for me. I'll just be right up front. That's going to take more of me thinking about it and reprocessing everything to get to that point where, okay, sexism can't be something from women towards men because women are in a position of power that men are, where men towards women is sexism because of the position of power and authority that men have over the culture. Hopefully I explained that correctly. If I didn't, let me know. Meritocracy. So meritocracy is just one of these ideologies of American life that we grasp to, that anyone can succeed if they put in the hard work, but it completely forgets about all the the institutional biases towards certain people. So racism is different than an individual racial prejudice. Racism has institutional power and authority. People of color may hold prejudices and discriminate against white people, but it isn't racism because it isn't given social, institutional, or systematic power. And that was very important for me to understand. Um, you know, People of color can be prejudiced and discriminate against white people, but it isn't racism because they don't have they're not in a position of social, institutional, or systematic power. Whites hold the social and institutional positions in society. There was a page in the book that lists all of the major people that run the country, and most of them were 90% white. Majority of them were like 98% white, and a lot of them were men. Only whites have the collective social and institutional power and privilege over people of color. So there's a bird cage metaphor. If you look at the bird cage and you look very closely and only see one of the bars in the bird cage, you would think that the bird can just fly past that one bar to get out of the bird cage. But your viewpoint is narrow. You have to step back and see all the other bars, all the systematic barriers that are blocking that bird from escaping that cage. White privilege is a system of advantage based on race. Racism is not fluid. One does not change direction. Racism doesn't change direction towards white people. Individual whites do struggle and face barriers, but not racism. And she's very clear about this. She wants the white people that are reading this book understand that she understands that individual white people have struggles and they face barriers in their life, but one of those barriers is not racism. Whiteness is a foundational idea that white is the default, and I have to really work on that myself, because I feel like I definitely think that, and I have to really struggle with that and wrestle with that, exploring what it means to be white. So Jackie Robinson is known as the first black man to play baseball, and he got a lot of comments and hate towards him, but it should be said that he is the first black man that white people allowed to play Major League Baseball. There were plenty of black people before that played baseball very well that could have made it in the pros. And white history is like the default, the norm. So when people complain about like Black History Month, white history is basically all the rest of the time. Whites push forth individualism and meritocracy, and that is something that I definitely, those two things, individualism, meritocracy, is very ingrained in my thinking of people. White supremacy is being used now as another definition for racism. It's not necessarily what it used to be, what it used to mean. It's basically now that whiteness is the norm, that people that believe that whiteness is the norm. So a political system that has made the modern world, white supremacy is the political system that has made the modern world, but that is never said, that is never acknowledged. Imagine if another race was seen the way white people are in the world. So this is one of my thoughts. What if, Chinese culture and Chinese individuals they were the dominant culture in the world? How would that actually change the world and the culture that we live in? That's really interesting. It's a really interesting thought experiment. People in power push their white interest even if they don't realize it. If everyone in power is white, and they're gonna be self-interested and not realize sometimes what they're doing. The alt-right wants to normalize white supremacy and white nationalism, so they change a lot of the words that were very racist, many years ago, into different types of slogans now, so that they can better attract individuals that are on the more conservative side. And that was really interesting. I need to read more about that, because I found that very interesting. A lot of the simple terms, this is just my thought, a lot of the simple terms, and I said this at the beginning, a lot of the simple terms that I thought I knew about the definition, it's not necessarily what I thought. So racism, white supremacy, sexism, things like this, you have an idea what they mean, but as time has changed, the definition has changed and has become more nuanced, and I have to, catch up with that way of thinking about those specific words, and that's a really big hurdle for me to overcome. So, all right, those were my thoughts on this section of White Fragility. Join me tomorrow if you'd like to on more of this, and I believe I'm on page 33 at the moment, so probably listen to another half hour and then talk about that. Put anything in the comment you'd like to say. Thanks. Bye.